Jacob was the youngest twin out of him and his brother Esau. His father was Isaac, son of Abraham, and his mother was Rebekah. Jacob is usually remembered as the son who deceived his father in giving him the blessings of the firstborn son, which explains why his name means he deceives. But this happened to fulfill the prophecy that God had given to his mother Rebekah while she was still pregnant with him and his brother Esau, that there were two nations in the womb, and that the eldest, Esau, would serve the youngest, Jacob. Now, even though it was a prophecy that had to be fulfilled, Esau was rightly very angry at his brother Jacob for deceiving his father and taking away something that traditionally was supposed to be his. So Esau actually planned to kill Jacob. So because of that, Jacob's parents, Isaac and Rebekah, both agreed that the best thing that they should do at that moment was to send Jacob to Laban's house. And Laban was Jacob's uncle, Rebekah's brother. So they said, go to Laban's house until your brother's anger goes away, and actually find a wife for you there. Find a wife from his daughters and just stay there until it's time to come back. Now, while Jacob is on his way to his uncle's city, he actually has a dream of a ladder going to heaven with God on the top and with angels ascending and descending on this ladder. And this image of this dream is the same one that we see Jesus tell Nathanael in John chapter 1 verse 51. He says, "Very truly I tell you, you will see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man." After having this dream, God reassures Jacob about the promise he made to his grandfather Abraham. And because of this experience, Jacob renames the place to Bethel. And Bethel means house of God. And there, at that moment, Jacob promises to serve God. Another famous story about Jacob is the one about Leah and Rachel. So Jacob gets to his uncle Laban's house and he falls in love with the youngest daughter, Rachel. And he says to his uncle, "Look, I'll work 7 years in return for Rachel." And he does exactly that. He works 7 years for Laban, and on his wedding night, Laban actually deceives him and gives him Leah, the eldest, instead of Rachel. Jacob was obviously very upset, so he goes to his uncle Laban and he says, "Why have you given me Leah? I worked 7 years for Rachel and you've given me Leah." And Laban says, "Well, it's not our custom to give the youngest in marriage before the eldest. So as Leah was the eldest, I had to give her to you first. But okay, if you really want Rachel," he said, "if you really want her, then finish the wedding week with Leah. I'll give Rachel to you as a wife, but then you have to work 7 more years for me." And that's exactly what happened. After the wedding week with Leah had finished, Rachel was given into marriage to Jacob, and then Jacob worked another 7 years. Now Jacob had many sons, and these many sons came from many women. So Rachel couldn't have children for a very long time. And once Leah gave Jacob his firstborn son, Reuben, then all these other sons came afterwards. Some of these sons came from Leah, Leah's servant Bilhah, Rachel's servant Zilpah, and eventually Rachel when she was able to conceive. So Jacob had 13 children altogether, 12 sons and 1 daughter. And these 12 sons became the founders of the tribes of Israel. And because the tribes of Israel are actually quite important into the history of the Bible and the Israelites and everything, I will go through the order in which these children were born, and I'll explain whose mother they were from. So because it's a lot of names, I'm actually just going to read from my notes here and try and explain the best I can. So we have Reuben, the firstborn, then we have Simeon, Levi, and Judah. These were Leah's sons. Then we have the fifth son, Dan, and the sixth son, Naphtali. These two were of Rachel's servant, Bilhah. Then we have Gad and Asher, the seventh and eighth son. And these sons were of Leah's servant, Zilpah. Then we have the ninth son, Issachar, who was Leah's. Then we have Zebulun, the 10th son, who was also Leah's. And then we have Dinah, who was Leah's, but she was the first woman. She was the only daughter of Jacob. And then afterwards, we have Joseph, who was the 12th son, who was Rachel's firstborn son. She was able to conceive, and her first son was Joseph. And then finally, we have Benjamin, who was also Rachel's son. But through the childbirth of Benjamin, Rachel actually passed away. Jacob was also the man who wrestled with God. The Bible says that Jacob was wrestling with a man until daybreak, and Jacob would not let the man go until he received his blessing. And there, God changed Jacob's name from Jacob to Israel. Through Jacob and his choices, we see how children tend to repeat the mistakes of their parents. We see how deceit, jealousy, impatience, favoritism can all bring problems into the blessing that God has for you, which didn't have to be there in the first place. But we also see that when God makes a promise, he fulfills it. Despite Jacob's mistakes, he was still chosen by God to lead a nation which is called after his name till today, Israel. So in spite of our mistakes, our errors, or our flaws, God can still use us to carry out his plan.